Hi, this is Lisa McManus from America's Test Kitchen Gearheads, and I'm here to answer some of your questions on our recent video about blenders. They were terrific questions, so let's get started. First question was, why don't you guys have a Ninja in the testing? We do actually already have a recommendation for a personal blender, and our winner there is the Ninja Nutri Ninja Pro. It blends into 18 or 24 ounce travel cups. So if that's all you're going to do is smoothies or really small jobs like making some salad dressing or something, they're pretty good, and that's our favorite. It costs about $70 to $90 depending on where you get it. The price varies a little bit. So that said, if you're going to get into that price category, why not spend about that same amount and get the NutriBullet, which has a 64 ounce jar. Personally, I don't really have a problem with blending it in that jar and pouring it into a smaller container, and then you get some more versatility. You can make a big pitcher of frozen margaritas for your friends, whatever. But your call. If all you're going to do is personal blending, the Ninja Nutri Ninja Pro is our pick there. Someone asked, are all these blenders good for grinding coffee beans, or do you recommend a separate coffee grinder? I would say go ahead and get a separate coffee grinder. Two reasons. One is our favorite inexpensive coffee grinder is only about $20. It's by Krups and does a great job. And two, once you start grinding coffee, coffee is super aromatic, as we all know. It will leave those oils and that flavor in the jar. And as much as we did try a test with chipotles and adobo, and to try to see if like flavors and smells stayed in the jars, and these are all pretty good. All of our three picks were very good about not transferring flavors and scents. I think once you're doing a coffee every day in there, everything will be a little bit coffee. So your call, but I would probably just go ahead and buy a purpose-built coffee grinder for $20 and leave that to that. We don't even like to mix spices and coffee in the same coffee grinders. We would say buy an extra one to grind your spices, because then all your coffee is going to have interesting spice flavors, which if you want, okay. Okay, someone said, I would have liked to see you have demos of us making almond butter and mayonnaise instead of the same smoothie. We picked the smoothie for two reasons. One is it really does show differences in textures. Specifically, we chose that smoothie recipe, I think, as Hannah pointed out, because it's a challenge, and we do it in every blender because they don't all perform as well as the three you just saw in that video. A lot of them leave you with stuff like liquid and chunks of kale. We call them nano salads, ones with huge pieces of kale in there, or pieces of pineapple that didn't process, or they just don't have a nice consistency. They're too aerated. They taste more like froth than a smoothie. So it's a really great test to show the differences between blenders. And honestly, what you saw was that they all did almost the same job. And so it's a great way to compare across the board. Like, how does this one do versus this one and this one? That said, they all did make almond butter well. And except for the one that I pointed out, the inexpensive blender, they all made mayonnaise. So you would kind of see the same thing again. Here they are again and again. How does the NutriBullet full size do on pesto? We did not test pesto, but that's a great question. Honestly, I'm pretty sure it would do fine. It does leafy, tough kale, so it could do basil very easily. Pine nuts are no challenge after toasted almonds, which are quite hard and crunchy, and then, it was able to turn into a creamy almond butter. Olive oil, cheese, it could do all those things. So I'm sure it would make a great pesto. If you're going to do it, let me know. How are they at chopping up ice? Someone asked. We do ice as a test across the board with blenders. All three of these did a great job with ice. This was one of the flaws. For instance, when Vitamix was tested against a Blendtec, the ice just kind of flew to the walls and stayed there. And that narrow jar and the Vitamix and the action of the motor kept that ice processing and made a nice uniform texture. Same with the Breville Gorgeous. It even has an ice crush button, so you just like push that and go, and it's perfect uniform. The NutriBullet is very manual, as I said. It only has like slow, it has low, medium, high, and pulse. So, a couple pulses and maybe some high speed, and it broke up the ice just fine and kept it moving. The bad blenders that I tested had that same problem as the very high-end Blendtec. They would throw the ice to the walls, and you get some little pieces that were melting in some big chunks you couldn't get back in there. You're in there scraping while everything is turning into slush. It's the not good. So trust us, we did the ice. These ones can do it. Let's see. Someone pointed out that the cheap blender at almost $90 is still high end to them. And so they weren't going to spend over $30 for a blender. I tried a $25 blender in my testing lineup of inexpensive blenders where the cutoff was $100. Not worth it. You don't have enough time in your life to spend waiting for that thing and working with it to get to chop things. It's so annoying. It kept stalling out. Everything would cavitate, is what the term is. It would start, and then 10 seconds later, the blades were spinning in a little bubble, like a little cave of ingredients, and you had to stop and shake it and push it down and start over again. It took nearly 6 times as long as the other blenders to make a smoothie. It was, ugh, forget it. So you got to spend a little more in this case. Blenders have a hard job, and the geometry of how they work with the jars and the blades and everything else really makes a big difference. So testing is frustrating and rewarding. I mean, you do see the ones that perform, but you also have to struggle with the ones that don't. Can a good immersion blender do as well as one of the mid-price or budget blenders, especially if you use the right vessel, like a tall, narrow container? You could. It would probably take a while, and I'm not sure on all the different textures of things. We have made smoothies in them and doing other things with immersion blenders in the course of testing. I just think it's a lot of manual labor because you are controlling where the blade is and you're holding it. Um, so yeah, it does a pretty decent job chopping things up. But I think some of the more challenging things, like I'm not sure I'd want to be standing there long enough to do almond butter. Life is short, so sometimes you want it to be more hands off. Um, and the last question: are the blender jars made of glass or plastic? Okay, all three of our winning jars have BPA free um, plastic. So they are, they don't leach any chemicals, they're very durable and tough, and they're also lightweight. Glass blender jars can be pretty heavy. But we do have some recommendations for blenders with glass jars. One is the Instant Ace Plus cooking blender. It's about $150. Sometimes it goes down under 100. And it does a really nice job. It's a really good blender. And the other is the Black & Decker Quiet Blender with Cyclone Glass Jar. And that one's about $60. It was our best buy in our inexpensive story. So it's a couple $20 cheaper than the NutriBullet full size. Does a nice job. Not quite as good as the NutriBullet power and capacity and all those nice things that you want. A little more stopping and scraping to get some more difficult things processed, but a really nice blender nevertheless, and has a glass jar. So I hope those were helpful answers to your questions. Keep them coming. We love it. And we hope you see you next time on Gearheads.